Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you are well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some more Reddit stories, and if you do love a Reddit story, why not consider hitting that like, subscribe, maybe that notification bell too, and let's crack on with today's first story. Much love guys. Now today's first story comes from the relationship advice subreddit from a throwaway account. This story originally started back in April 2020, so we're going to cover those initial parts of the story. I think there's 3 updates it says, and then there's one that comes 5 years later. As always, if you want to skip certain parts of the story, timestamps are always down in the description and along the timeline below. Thank you. It's titled, Fiancé 35 male compared my 28 female antidepressants to cocaine and wants me off them. I have the loveliest, most charming and attentive fiancé. We had a whirlwind romance 9 months in, which he proposed over quarantine. He's everything I want in a partner, and I love him deeply. The last 3 months were rough for me. I had a car accident, started a small business, and had a family member pass away. My fiancé and I weren't getting along because I was stressed, crying, and had to enter serious therapy to deal with the effects of the accident. I was unhealthily dependent on my fiancé and would call him nightly, just sobbing my eyes out. I started taking a low dose of antidepressant. Finally, I'm not fixated on the accident. I'm happy and go lucky. I'm back swimming again, my favorite activity, calling friends, and my business is doing well. I admit I have less time for my fiancé. I'm much less needy. Sometimes I can't get to my phone in time and miss his calls. When before I couldn't leave my room and needed to be connected 24/7. My fiancé sat me down and expressed his concerns. He told me he loves me, but he's noticed a change in personality. He said he spoke with a few doctors and antidepressants can even be compared to cocaine, and that I could be doing lasting damage to myself. He said, I can support you through all the pain and the messiness. I love you and I want you in my life forever. He said I should call my doctor and request to come off. I kind of balked and he didn't take it well. He requested that I at least respond to his messages in a reasonable time, and that he knows me well and this new personality isn't the real me and I'm moving too much. I'm kind of concerned with other behavior from my fiancé. He wants me to wear baggier clothes to the gym and wants to be involved in every decision I make. When it comes to meeting new clients, he wants to know who they are, otherwise he says it seems shady. I have a possible contract that would take me out of town and he expressed concern, telling me I need to stay close to family. I love him, but every conversation turns into him telling me they have to work harder so he can trust me. Besides counseling, what else can I do? Edit, and I just want to say I have no plans of getting off my medication. It's non-negotiable. TLDR, fiancé doesn't want me on SSRIs. Let's face it, we can see towards the end of OP's post that this is basically all about control. He wants control, and him complaining about your antidepressants was just bull. He's not worried about your health. He's worried that he's losing his control that he previously had on you because you were housebound, you couldn't leave your room, and you was dependent on him. And that's the way he liked it. And apparently his doctor telling him that it was compared to cocaine is absolute bullshit. Let's face it. There was lots of points within it, the controlling her clothing choices, the involvement in every decision about, and also trying to, find out about her clients. Well, she's trying to run her own business. When you said you need to go out of town for business, he's immediately saying, oh no, you shouldn't leave family. It's all control. I've told you guys before, I've been on antidepressants a couple of times. It massively helped me through some difficult times. I can't say that for everyone, of course, but for me, it truly did help. So if it's working for OP, definitely do not come off them for now. But Snoo Lobster says, do not come off medication. Do not give him access to your medication. He will tamper with it. I'm not joking. He's lying about speaking to a few psychiatrists and antidepressants being like cocaine. He wants you off them so that you are dependent on him again. This man wants to control you. That's what he's interested in. Why wouldn't he be happy that you're doing so well? Your whirlwind romance started with love bombing, and now he's panicking because you're happy and less dependent on him. Keep an eye on your medication at all times. He does not love you. He wants control over you. OP said, I was a sobbing mess off my medication. It wasn't stable. He's been testing me lately as I'm not as reactive. I just don't understand why someone would want that. It doesn't make for a healthy relationship. Tossout said it doesn't make for a healthy relationship. He doesn't want a healthy relationship. He started with love bombing and now it's on to control. This is also textbook abuse early warning signs. You might as well be writing a horror movie script. Fat Dog says red flags of coercive control here. He likes you dependent on him. I'm positive he did not find a few doctors who said antidepressants like cocaine and can lead to brain damage. This statement would be laughable if he wasn't so obviously trying to control you. Lovely, charming, and attentive is how these types usually start out. It's called love bombing. Start being strong and independent, refusing to play his games, and see how long that lasts though. Proceed carefully because I've seen this turn ugly. Ebby says there's actually a name for the tactic that some abusive partners use to control the other partner's mental health, including their mental health medication. It's called mental health coercion. The National Domestic Violence Hotline did a national survey on it a couple of years ago, and many callers reported various forms of it. Partners hiding their medications, demanding they not use medication, impeding their access to therapy, gaslighting them, telling them they deserve to be abused because they had depression or anxiety, etc. Substance use coercion is similar and is also a type of domestic abuse. So OP come in with an update 5 days later and says many of you commented advising me that this was an emotionally abusive relationship. I admit I am naive and didn't want to believe that was the truth. I spent some time with my fiancé on the weekend and he continued with his pep talk about the antidepressants. He said I should taper them off to 5 milligrams and gave me a timeline for doing it. I'd only been agreeing with him so we didn't have to argue, but secretly I continued with them on my own. After this weekend we had a wonderful time. He tells me he has hope for our future, that he supports me going through the pain, etc, etc. On Monday we were talking and I brought up a pretty big issue in our relationship. I won't go into specifics. He is at fault though. That isn't solved. My fiancé went ballistic. For the first time he screamed at the top of his lungs with his face distorted and spit flying everywhere. He told me I didn't have a brain big enough to change and that all I do is sit there and smile with my fucking medication and that I'm a pitiful, almost 30-year-old woman who is pathetic, and if I want to see real trauma, he could show me. He said you're an evil person who is deliberately hurting the only person who loves you, and how dare you bring up these issues when you know I'm stressed. Because I was stoic, he became even more enraged until I had to pretend to cry. Yes, I had to pretend to cry because that's the only way he would calm down. I do feel guilty because he's stressed. He said, if you believe I've overreacted, delete me. If you want to listen with your heart and put everything on the line and be a ride or die team, I'll come to your place tomorrow. Suddenly he told me, something has come up, let's talk in a week, and he has completely disappeared / gone offline. Because he was screaming at me in front of family members. I think he may have been committed to a psych ward. I don't know. I finally found the courage to just block him completely. It hurts like hell, but it's the only way. Jesus bloody Christ, that got absolutely scary quickly, didn't it? Bucky says, holy fuck, you need to keep him blocked and do not get back into this relationship. It's only a matter of time before that shit becomes physical. I doubt that alone would get him committed to a psych ward. It's more likely he's on a bender or something. Luna Falcon says, I'm terrified for OP. If this situation escalates any further, she's going to end up hospitalized or dead. Please stay safe and keep the psychopath the fuck out of your life. OP says, I'm beyond brainwashed. He calls me every day for 40 minutes to 1 hour to tell me everything that's wrong with me and needs to be changed. Over time, I've started to believe it. I've lost myself. Muck Susie says, I have to tell you. It is very unusual to conclude that because someone shouted they have been committed to a psych ward. That is just a really dramatic notion. Why didn't the family members present intervene when he was screaming and spitting on you? OP says it's not because of the screaming. It's because of his unusual / manic behavior that's become increasingly worse the 4 weeks. He's hearing and seeing things that aren't happening. He was telling me I was evil and that I had to wake up. Edit. There are many other things I didn't include in this. So 6 months after that post, OP comes in again and says, I want to take the time to thank all of the lovely commenters. It was hard to hear and understand at the time, but you really helped me see how fucked up that situation was. Thank you for all the resources which I had to read over and over in order to try and understand. My ex-fiancé and I are no longer together, and we have zero contact. We had a terrible breakup in which he threatened to traumatize me. I spiraled into a pretty bad depression and continued with serious therapy. I took a 2-month trip abroad and entered a healing retreat that was out of cell service. I basically spent 7 weeks crying, vomiting, and healing in the jungle. The good news is that my anxiety has lessened, to the point that I no longer take any kind of medication. I lost 20 pounds, I bought a new apartment, started a new job, and slowly started dating someone new. I made a lot of new friends and I'm actually allowed to see them now. My guy is about 100 times better and he has never tried to control me in any way. I've bumped into my ex-fiancé 4 times and honestly I kind of recoil at the sight of him. I have no idea how he's able to control my life so much at one point. That was a really dark place. It will take me a long time before I love anyone again, but that's okay. I'm giving myself a lot of time and space. Things aren't perfect and I'm still processing, but things turned out much better than I hoped for. So thanks again, Reddit. Crystal says, sometimes the best medication is removing toxic people from your life. Toss Out Reply says, and in this case, ayahuasca. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. OP Reply said, ayahuasca helped a lot, but so did time and space and removing him. So, as I said, it was 5 years later, 2026, that OP comes back into the post and says, hey Reddit, 5 years ago, I posted about my extremely toxic fiancé here. I almost forgot about the whole ordeal, but I started thinking about it because I'm engaged. It took a lot of trial and error, but I'm a lot happier. When I think of my ex-fiancé, I'm honestly shocked that I couldn't imagine that life would be good again. So dramatic. It's been a wild 5 years, but I moved to New York, went back to school, and went back on medication. I did find love again, except this time my fiancé supports and encourages me to grow and understand that I'm stubborn about my independence. Hence why it took 6 months for me to leave a toothbrush at his place. Anyway, I've learned that love is about understanding and respect, which is not something I thought I deserved when I first posted. So thanks again, Reddit. TLDR, my ex-fiancé is still a loser. Gameboy Path says, whoa, 5-year update. Thanks for coming back. I'm glad to hear that you've not only stood firm on a treatment plan that you personally believe aligns with your own values, priorities, and goals, but you've also found a partner who can respect your personal health choices. The first part would have been a positive outcome on its own, but I'm happy to hear you can build a healthy sense of trust and personal boundaries. Absolutely relieved and thrilled for OP in that final update, going from what she's been through to now her own independence. A bloke who respects that the toothbrush is a big commitment. It's the kind of stuff that you hope to see. And I don't want to be Mr. Negative on this, but it always pops into my head when I have these stories. And I know it's a bit of a downer in some ways, but I can't help but think that that guy is still out there and probably likely just doing the same thing again. Maybe not. Maybe had a big turnaround in the end, but I don't know. I always find that hard to believe. But once again, good for OP in this situation. But what do you guys make of this one? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. And now let's move on to another story. Now our next story comes from overinitial6175 from the Am I the Arsehole subreddit. And it says, am I the arsehole for not agreeing to letting my husband replace his name with his grandfather's as our son's middle name? Hi. I would really like to know if I'm the arsehole here. There are aspects of it which immediately go against me. We're expecting our first child, a boy, and I'm due in March. My husband and I had gone over names. Our understanding was that the last name would be his, the middle name would be my husband's name, and while we were both going over first names, he used to defer to my choice as long as he was okay with the name. And fortunately, my first choice was one he was good with, and that's what we've decided. Yesterday he told me he wanted to honor his late grandfather, my mother-in-law's father, by using his first name instead of his own as the middle name. He said his mother had suggested it, and that they were all close to him before he passed away of cancer, and that they had caught super late, so it was kind of untimely. I tried to be as diplomatic about it as I could, but I said that I don't think it's a good idea to do that. His reasoning was that the middle name was supposed to be his name, and he's just choosing to give it away to his grandfather. It's the same thing. And I said, no, it's not. His name was something I was okay with, something that I wanted. I love him, and by extension, his name, and want it to be a part of our son's name, not his grandfather's, whom I've never met. We kind of ended at an impasse. He thinks I'm being unfair, and that he had been accommodating when it came to the first name. True, because that was my call. Well, the middle name was his. I told him that the middle name was supposed to be his name. Am I the arsehole? Edit. I've read the comments and thank you for the feedback. I guess the middle name being my husband's prerogative makes sense. I don't hate the name he's suggesting, and if it's important to him, then fine. I sound dramatic, I know, but I need some time to mourn the complete name I had in mind. It was just the first name we chose followed by my husband's name was just perfect in my mind. But I understand it's a compromise. I'm just going to take some time to process it. So OP was replying to some of the commenters. One commenter quoted OP saying, not his grandfathers whom I've never met, and then says, yeah, I'm going to withhold judgment on the question. If you don't like the name, that's one thing, but this right here is bullshit. 2 of my sons have my wife's uncle's name. One is his first name and another has his middle name as a second hyphenated first name. I never met him. He passed away years before my wife and I even met. But I understand that he meant the world to my wife, and I was more than okay with him being honored like that. With our youngest boy, I had a different second middle name picked out of a list that included her uncle's middle name. When I told my wife which one I had picked, it was not her uncle's name. She asked me if we could use her uncle's name, and I agreed without even blinking. If you don't have a problem with the actual name, why not go ahead and let it be? Opie said, that makes sense. We'll go with his grandfather's name. Another commenter says, the thing about not having met his grandfather is kind of a sick thing to say. Like it's just some stranger and not someone your husband had a relationship with. I never got to meet 2 of my partner's grandparents, but I'm still interested in knowing about and remembering them as people who shaped my partner and are part of my lineage too now. Another commenter says, gently, you're the arsehole. You got to choose the first name subject to him being okay with it. Why can't you do the same for him on the middle name? Right now you're effectively trying to choose all of it yourself. Commenter says, another possibility would be to give the child 2 middle names, your husband and his grandfather's. Seems to me like that would be a win-win situation. Having said that, your mother-in-law should stay in her own lane. She got to name her children, you and your husband should be allowed the same. Wishing you a safe and uneventful delivery. Another commenter said, you're the arsehole. You're okay until the end. You got to pick the first name, he got to pick the middle name. That was the agreement it would seem. Quoting, I love him, not his grandfather who I've never met, and then said, so basically, you get to name your child and he gets to pick the middle name. So as long as it's the one you approve of. Why not just cut out the nonsense and pick it yourself, since that seems to be the goal? The selfishness here is off the charts. Either he picks the middle name or he doesn't. Stop this nonsense. Commenter says, it sounds like you just want to control the entirety of the naming process. If he came back tomorrow and said he didn't like your choice, would you still use it? You told him the middle name was his choice, no strings attached. Now that he's changed it to something you don't want, it has strings. Opie says no. We'd started looking at names. We agreed the middle name would be his, as in his name. The possibility of him substituting it with anyone else's hadn't really been talked about. A commenter replies to OP saying, well, that sounds like you didn't communicate properly. It sounds like you said he can use his middle name because you liked it. Maybe he didn't want to. Maybe he settled because you took control. You didn't answer my question. If he said he didn't like the name you chose, would you still use it? Opie says, no, I wouldn't. If my first choice name was one he had an issue with, I wouldn't have pushed for it. Commenter says, you're the arsehole. You got to choose the first name. Is the grandpa's name reasonable? Or do you just want control and want to choose all 3 names because it sounds like you had a hand in picking all 3? Opie says it's reasonable as a name. Commenter says, let your husband honor his grandfather. He will have wonderful stories to tell your son, and your son will be happy to know he was named after someone his father loved so much. Opie says, I'm going to think over this. It's just until yesterday I was welcoming my son with a particular name, and now that just changed, maybe I need some time. Also, I like my husband's name being our son's middle name, and that's not happening anymore. Commenter says, you're the arsehole. You made a deal with your husband. You got to keep your part of the deal. If he wants to change it, he can. OP says, but the deal was me having more of a say in the first name, the last name being his, and the middle name being his name, not a placeholder for any other name he wants to insert. And I've got to admit, the commenters completely threw me on this one because I had a bit of a different take on the matter, and as always, it might be I've read one too many Reddit stories, right? My view might be skewed. Whenever we've seen stories like this in the past, it's always been like a 2 yeses, 1 no situation. And the way that I saw it, Baby's getting his last name, and regarding the first name, it didn't seem like he was totally out of the picture with deciding it. He was okay with the name. He had a say in it by some account, right? And I can totally understand her, she already pictured this full name, first, middle, last name in her head, and suddenly that's changed. That's going to rock you a bit, I think. There was also a part in this that jumped out to me, the mother-in-law suggesting this middle name, and I was like, oh, hold up a second. That's tickling me old Reddit brain right there. This decision should be between the two of them and no one else. Mother-in-law shouldn't be having a say at all. In the end, I was just thinking, they should be working together on all the names regardless, all have some say in every single name. Otherwise, it just leaves the door open to possible resentment, all that kind of thing, which, they're a couple. They're husband and wife. But OP did come in with an update and said, hi, thanks for all the comments in my post. They were eye-opening and super helpful. After reading them, I decided to be okay with us choosing his grandfather's name instead of his. The comments had made the important point that though I'd never met him, he was clearly important to my husband. And as much as I wanted my husband's name as the middle name, it was a good way to honor him. Yesterday morning, I told him I was on board with using his grandfather's name as the middle name. I didn't pout or anything, I want to make that clear. I just genuinely said if he wants that, then I'm okay with it. He asked me if I was sure, and I said yeah. And last night, he spoke to me about it again, and said if I preferred his name as the middle name, then that's what we should do. I told him I'd come to terms with the change, and he said he pushed for the change because his mum had wanted it, and he thought he did too. But on thinking it over more, he wanted the name to be the one I wanted more. He also said he loved how much I wanted the middle name to be his. Admittedly, I still did want that. I thanked him for being so understanding. We've always talked about 2 or 3 kids, so maybe we'll get the chance to honor his grandfather or grandmother again. Thanks for all the comments. I feel like we're in a better place for me listening to them. Commenter says, it's always a mother-in-law who wants a second chance at naming a kid when she presumably didn't even do it for her own children. He already gets the last name, and you agree on the first name, even though you came up with it. So yeah, the middle should be a compromise. Glad you worked it out. Commenter says, wait, you talked to each other, listened to each other, acted like you cared about each other, and then were both willing to compromise. Reddit is broken tonight. Commenter says, hooray! It's nice to see someone genuinely looking for feedback and then taking that feedback to heart. Also really nice to see spouses who actually communicate. Really happy this seems to be working out. Like you said, if you have another son, maybe you could find a first name that sounds just perfect with grandpa's. Commenter says, I was definitely on the OP is the arsehole side for the original post. But if OP genuinely believes that hubby changed his mind for the stated reason, and not because he felt like he had to, then I think we should obviously trust that. Glad you two came to a happy resolution, OP. And the last commenter says, maybe give your husband some time with this new information. Perhaps he will change his mind. I guess I'm sort of worried that he's relenting because he knows how much you want this. Happy wife, happy life and all. But now, I'm gonna turn this one to you guys. What do you guys make of this situation? What would you have done if you was in that position? Was you with the commenters on You're the Arsehole? Maybe not. Completely different opinion on the matter. Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. Let's move on to another story. And to finish off, we're going to cover a story from the Today I Messed Up subreddit from JediJacob04, and says, today I effed up by jokingly ringing up a transaction for $28 million at work. I work at a liquor store, and it being the 26th of December, it was relatively very slow today. Near the end of my shift, me and a coworker had nothing much to do, so I jokingly scanned a miniature bottle of alcohol several times as if he was a customer purchasing that many bottles. To keep the joke going, I then scanned an entire box of pre-made shooters, something like 40 shooters at $3 each, several times once again. The total was something like $2,500 at this point. My coworker then had the bright idea to check the system and find some expensive wines that were sold and are still in the system, and finds one worth several thousands of dollars, almost $10,000, and sets the quantity in the POS to 999, the maximum allowed. By this point, the running total is $9 million, and we're cracking up. We were extremely bored. And then he finds another bottle, this one nearly $20,000, and then sets the quantity to 999, bringing the total up to $28 million. Now, this is where I'm personally responsible for the fuck up. I pretended to bring the transaction up to the point right up to when you confirm how much the customer is paying in cash. It automatically assumes the customer is paying in full, and the only thing stopping the transaction from going through was single press of the enter key. My coworker didn't see that I was already there and mistakenly pressed enter to reach the same point I'd brought us to. $28 million in theoretical cash made its way to the cash register's balance. I yelled at my coworker to ask what the fuck he did, and he realized what he had done, and his eyes went wide. We immediately tried to reverse the entire transaction, but understandably, there's a 1 million maximum that you can return at a time, so attempting to return 28 million of sold alcohol didn't work. After figuring out the maximum, I then had to do dozens of returns each worth at 1 million at a time until every single bottle of alcohol was returned and the inventory was corrected from minus 999 to 0. However, in the reports for that day, it shows 28 million in revenue and a similar amount in returns, which will completely fuck up stats and graphs and everything, which higher ups will obviously inquire about. I'm going to wait for my store manager tomorrow morning before she comes in so that I can explain what happened and confess that we were joking around and never meant to go through with the transaction. Please pray for me and my job. I 100% accept that we're at fault and deserve some sort of punishment for exaggerating as much as we did and for not working when we were supposed to. I think the majority of the comments on this one was like, this could be your last day at work, but OP did come in sometime later with a tiny little update and said, my boss was understandably frustrated and disappointed, but the worst that can happen is the higher ups will meet and they'll probably decide to give us warnings / it'll be in our files, but nothing more. Anyway, what about you guys? Have you guys ever seen a massive F up within a company that maybe cost someone their job, maybe didn't, maybe they got away with it? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. Now, just a huge thank you for being here today, getting involved in the stories, your love, your support, your time. It always means the absolute world to me. So thank you so much for being here. Truly, it's absolutely amazing. And hopefully I'm going to see you in the next one. Take care and much love.